New research just dropped that should change how you look at everything in your grocery cart. According to a massive review published in the BMJ, one of the world's most prestigious medical journal, ultra-processed foods are now linked to 32 different harmful health effects, including heart disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes, mental health disorders, and early death. And here's what makes this different from previous warning. This isn't one study with a few hundred participants. This is an umbrella review analyzing nearly 10 million people across multiple studies, representing the most comprehensive evaluation of ultra-processed foods ever conducted. But it gets worse. According to research reported by The Guardian in 2024, ultra-processed foods now make up more than half of the average diet in the UK and US. And according to a study published in Food Safety News, these same processed foods may be a major source of PFAS exposure, the forever chemicals linked to serious health concerns. The foods that were just exposed aren't exotic or rare. They're the ones filling your pantry, your fridge, and your kids' lunchboxes right now. And the science that just came out makes it impossible to keep pretending they're harmless convenience food. Primer. Here's what's really happening and why this moment is different from every previous warning about processed food. According to the BMJ's Umbrella Review, published in 2024, researchers analyzed 45 pooled meta-analyses from 14 different review articles, representing nearly 10 million participants. And this is the most comprehensive examination of ultra-processed food consumption and health outcomes ever conducted. The findings are stark. According to The Guardian's reporting on the research, ultra-processed food consumption is associated with 32 harmful health effects. The evidence ranges from convincing to highly suggestive for outcomes including cardiovascular disease mortality, type 2 diabetes, common mental health disorders, anxiety, and obesity. But here's what makes this particularly concerning. According to NIH research on food processing and health, ultra-processed foods now comprise over 50% of total dietary energy intake in high-income countries. This isn't about occasional treats. This is about the foundation of the modern diet being built on foods that the largest scientific review ever conducted has linked to dozens of harmful health effects. And there's a contamination angle that's just emerging. According to research reported by Food Safety News, a study found that people who consumed more processed and prepared foods had higher levels of PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, synthetic chemicals linked to various health concerns, in their blood. The packaging, processing equipment, and production methods for ultra-processed foods may be exposing consumers to these forever chemicals. The real consequence is this. For decades, the food industry has positioned ultra-processed foods as convenient, affordable, and essentially equivalent to real food. But the scientific evidence that just came out, reviewing nearly 10 million people, suggests that building your diet on these products is associated with serious, measurable health consequences. Let's break down exactly what got exposed, starting with what ultra-processed foods actually are, then moving into the evidence of harm, and finally revealing the contamination concerns that most people don't even know about. The small issue, what counts as ultra-processed, start with understanding what we're actually talking. According to the BMJ research, ultra-processed foods are defined using the NOVA classification system. These aren't just processed foods like frozen vegetables or canned beans. Ultra-processed foods are formulations of ingredients, mostly of exclusive industrial use, that result from a series of industrial processes. Here's what that means in practice. According to NIH research on food processing, ultra-processed foods typically contain ingredients you wouldn't use in home cooking. Hydrolyzed proteins, modified starches, hydrogenated oils, emulsifiers, thickeners, flavor enhancers, colors, and sweeteners. They're engineered products, not food. The Guardian's reporting lists the common ultra-processed food, packaged snacks, sugary drinks, instant noodles, ready-to-eat or ready-to-heat meals, many breakfast cereals, packaged breads, most industrially produced confectionery and desserts, and many meat alternatives. So, what is this? When you look at the average American or British shopping cart, according to research, over half the calories come from this category. We're not talking about occasional indulgences. We're talking about breakfasts, lunches, snacks, and dinners built primarily on ultra-processed formulation. And most people have no idea they're doing it because these products are marketed as normal food, positioned as everyday staples, and priced to be affordable. The industry has successfully made ultra-processed foods the default rather than the exception. The larger issue, the 32 harmful health effects. Now, we get into the evidence that just came out, and it's comprehensive in a way previous research wasn't. According to the BMJ's Umbrella Review, which analyzed nearly 10 million participants across multiple studies, ultra-processed food consumption is associated with 32 harmful health effects. Here's what the evidence showed. They organized by strength. According to The Guardian's reporting on the findings, the strongest evidence, rated as convincing, linked ultra-processed foods to increased risk of cardiovascular disease-related death, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and mental health disorders, including anxiety and common mental disorders. The evidence, rated as highly suggestive, included associations with all-cause mortality, heart disease-related death, asthma, gastrointestinal health issues, some cancers, and cardiometabolic risk factors. According to the BMJ research, the analysis found dose-response relationships, meaning the more ultra-processed foods people consumed, the higher their risk across these health outcomes. This isn't about whether you occasionally eat a granola bar. This is about cumulative exposure and the proportion of your diet that comes from ultra-processed sources. Here's what makes this evidence particularly strong. According to the research methodology, an umbrella review sits at the top of the evidence hierarchy. It synthesizes multiple meta-analyses and systematic reviews, representing the collective findings from hundreds of individual studies. When this type of review finds associations across nearly 10 million people, that's as close to definitive as nutritional science gets. The real impact is that you can't dismiss this as one study said or conflicting research. This is the sum total of available evidence, analyzed systematically, showing consistent associations between ultra-processed food consumption and negative health outcomes across populations worldwide. Yes, the pattern revealed. It's not just nutrients. After understanding the scope of harmful effects, you start to see why this research is so important. According to the BMJ and Guardian reporting, previous research on processed foods often focused on specific nutrients, too much sugar, too much sodium, too much saturated fat. But this research suggests the problem is the processing itself, not just the nutrient profile. Here's the pattern. According to NIH research on ultra-processed foods, these products are specifically engineered to be hyperpalatable. They combine sugar, fat, and salt in ratios that don't occur in nature, creating flavor profiles that override normal satiety signals. They're designed to be consumed quickly, to be difficult to stop eating, and to encourage repeat purchases. The BMJ research suggests that the health effects can't be explained by poor nutritional quality alone. According to The Guardian's analysis, even when studies controlled for things like total calorie intake, sugar consumption, or fat intake, the associations between ultra-processed foods and negative health outcomes persisted. This suggests something about the processing itself, the industrial formulations, the additives, the altered food matrices, the combinations of ingredients, creates health risks beyond what you'd expect from the nutrients alone. And here's where it gets even more concerning. The contamination angle that most people haven't connected yet. The contamination concern, PFAS, in processed food. Now, the research reveals an additional layer of risk that goes beyond nutrition entirely. According to a study reported by Food Safety, researchers found that consumption of processed and prepared foods was associated with higher levels of PFAS in people's blood. Here's what PFAS are. Per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances are synthetic chemicals used in food packaging, non-stick cookware, and industrial process. According to the research, they're called forever chemicals because they don't break down in the environment or in the human body. They accumulate over time. The study found that people who ate more takeout food, microwave popcorn, and food from restaurants had higher PFAS levels. According to Food Safety News reporting, the researchers suggested that PFAS exposure could be coming from the packaging, grease-resistant wrappers, microwave popcorn bags, fast food container, or from food process equipment. Here's the connection to ultra-processed food. According to the research findings, ultra-processed foods are more likely to come in packaging that contains PFAS, more likely to be processed using equipment with PFAS containing non-stick surfaces, and more likely to be consumed in forms, takeout, ready-to-heat meals, where PFAS exposure is highest. So, what is this? When you eat ultra-processed foods regularly, you're not just consuming problematic nutrient ratios and engineered flavor compounds. According to emerging research, you may also be accumulating persistent synthetic chemicals that your body can't eliminate. The scope of exposure. How much are we really eating? After understanding both the health effects and the contamination concern, you need to grasp the scale of exposure. exposure. According to The Guardian's reporting and NIH research, ultra-processed foods account for more than 50% of total dietary energy in high-income countries like the US and UK. Think about what that means. More than half of the calories the average person consumes come from ultra-processed formulation. According to the research, this includes breakfast cereals, packaged bread, ready meals, snacks, sugary drink, and most restaurant food, including fast food. The BMJ research analyzed data from nearly 10 million people, but according to The Guardian, the real-world exposure is far broader. Hundreds of millions of people worldwide are building their diets primarily on ultra-processed foods, most without realizing the extent of their consumption or the scope of associated health risks. Here's the pattern that emerged. According to NIH research, ultra-processed foods are cheap to produce, heavily marketed, shelf-stable, convenient, and engineered to be hyper-palatable. This makes them the default choice for busy families, budget shoppers, and anyone prioritizing convenience. The food industry has successfully made ultra-processed foods the foundation of modern eating, and according to the BMJ's findings linking this consumption pattern to 32 harmful health effects, we're conducting a massive, uncontrolled public health experiment with results that are only now becoming clear. The industry response. What food companies don't want you to know. Now, you understand why the food industry fights so hard against regulation of ultra-processed food. According to the scope of the BMJ research and The Guardian's reporting, if consumers actually understood that ultra-processed foods are associated with increased risk of early death, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, obesity, and mental health disorders, it would fundamentally change purchasing behavior. The pattern is clear. Food companies position ultra-processed foods as normal, everyday option. They're marketed as part of a balanced diet, positioned next to real food in grocery stores, and advertised with health claims that focus on individual nutrients, high in fiber, good source of protein, while obscuring the ultra-processed nature of the product. According to NIH research on food marketing, the industry spends billions convincing consumers that these products are essentially equivalent to real food, just more convenient. The fortified with vitamins claim on breakfast cereal, to the made with real fruit on fruits, the whole grain stamp on ultra-processed bread. But according to the BMJ's umbrella review of nearly 10 million people, the processing matters more than these individual nutrient claims. A product can be high in fiber, fortified with vitamins, and made with whole grains, but if it's ultra-processed, the evidence suggests it's still associated with negative health outcomes. The real impact is that consumers are making purchasing decisions based on marketing that deliberately obscures the most important fact: the degree of industrial process, the specific category, what got exposed. Let's get specific about which products the research implicates. According to The Guardian's reporting on common ultra-processed food, the BMJ's research on health associates, here are the categories with the strongest evidence of harm: sugary drinks and sweetened beverages. According to the research, these are among the most harmful ultra-processed foods, with convincing evidence linking them to obesity, type 2, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. Ultra-processed breads and breakfast cereals. According to the findings, these everyday staples are associated with metabolic disorders and weight gain, even when marketed with health claim, ready to eat or ready to heat. According to the BMJ research, frozen dinners, microwavable meals, and instant food show strong associations with negative health outcomes across multiple categories. Packaged snack. According to the evidence, chips, cookies, crackers, and packaged baked goods are linked to obesity, metabolic dysfunction, and cardiovascular issues. Processed and reconstituted meat product. According to the research, items like chicken nuggets, fish sticks, and reconstituted meat product show associations with cancer risk and cardiovascular, industrial desserts, and confectionery. According to the BMJ findings, packaged cakes, cookie, candy, and ice cream show strong associations with metabolic disorders and weight gain. Many meat alternatives. According to NIH research cited in the review, plant-based ultra-processed foods show similar health associations as animal-based ultra-processed foods. The plant-based label doesn't negate the ultra-processed risks. The pattern across all these categories: heavy industrial processing, long ingredient lists with industrial additives engineered for shelf stability and hyperpalatability, marketed as everyday food. Safe pick. So what should you actually eat based on what the research showed? Let's talk about minimally processed whole food. Pick number 1, fresh or frozen vegetables and fruits. Why they're safer. According to the NOVA classification used in the BMJ research, these are minimally processed processed foods that retain their natural structure and don't contain industrial. Honest drawback: requires washing, chopping, cooking, shorter shelf life for fresh, needs more time and effort than ultra-processed alternative. Pick number 2, whole grain. You cook yourself. Rice, quinoa, oats. Why they're safer. According to research definitions, these are minimally processed, dried, or minimally refined whole grains without industrial additive. Honest drawback: longer cooking times, different texture than refined/processed grain. It requires planning and cooking skills. Pick number 3, unprocessed or minimally processed protein. Why they're safer? According to the BMJ research, fresh or frozen fish, chicken, eggs, beans, and lentils don't show the same health associations as ultra-processed alternative. Honest drawback: requires cooking, food safety knowledge, meal planning, costs more than processed protein product. Pick number 4, foods with fewer than 5 recognizable ingredients. Why they're safer? According to research on ultra-processed food, short ingredient lists with recognizable items, like oats, salt, indicate minimal process. Honest drawback: more expensive, less convenient, limited options in typical grocery store. Pick number 5, home-cooked meals from basic ingredients. Why they're safer? According to the BMJ and NIH research, our cooking from scratch using whole ingredients avoids both the ultra-processing and the PFAS contamination associated with packaged/prepared food. Honest drawback: requires significant time, planning, cooking skills, and effort compared to ready-to-eat options. These alternatives require more money, time, or effort than ultra-processed food. But according to research on nearly 10 million people, they don't carry the same associations with 32 harmful health effects. Outrow. Bottom line, the research that just came out, an umbrella review published in the BMJs analyzing nearly 10 million people, linked ultra-processed food consumption to 32 harmful health effects, including early death, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, obesity, and mental health disorders. This isn't one study you can dismiss or conflicting evidence you can ignore. This is the most comprehensive evaluation of ultra-processed foods ever conducted, representing hundreds of studies across millions of people worldwide. And the evidence ranges from convincing to highly suggestive that building your diet on ultra-processed foods is associated with serious, measurable health consequences. Add in the emerging research on PFAS contamination in processed food, and you're looking at both nutritional harm and chemical exposure that accumulates over time. You don't have to eliminate every ultra-processed food immediately, but you should understand what the evidence actually shows about regular consumption and make informed decisions rather than assuming that products sold at every grocery store must be safe to build your diet around. So here's my question: what percentage of your diet do you think comes from ultra-processed food? Comment honestly. Most people dramatically underestimate because they don't realize how many everyday products qualify. If this video changed how you think about processed foods, hit subscribe. Tomorrow we're breaking down exactly which brands and products count as ultra-processed so you'll know what to look for on your next grocery trip. See you then.